I love 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and the reason I love it is because I think Captain Nemo is one of the greatest characters in science fiction history. The idea of this Indian prince running amok and just bringing anarchy to the world's oceans, sticking up for the little guy and bringing vengeance to the Victorian establishment. To me at least, he was a real hero. The sea doesn't belong to tyrants, Captain Nemo once said. But in this iteration, Captain Nemo is wildly different. I am of course talking about the MGM 1969 classic Captain Nemo and the Underwater City. And from the outset, this isn't just some disposable old sci-fi film from the 60s. It's also a reflection on that post-war obsession with utopia, technocracy and social engineering. And yes, I can already hear you screaming at me in the comment section that this is a very bold statement, Mr. British Sci-Fi. Well, if you don't believe me, watch this. Before I begin though, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. That really helps the channel out. Captain Nemo and the Underwater City. This film was directed by James Hill, who is most famous for directing Born Free, but for me, the most beloved thing he done was Wurzel Gummidge. It was written by Pip and Jane Baker, who are most famous for their work on Doctor Who, in particular the Trial of the Time Lord. The film stars Robert Ryan, who, after making about 300 westerns, decided it was time for something different, and plays Captain Nemo. And he plays him brilliantly, alongside Chuck Connors, who's playing Senator Robert Fraser. Can we take a minute just to appreciate Chuck Connors? Because every now and again you come across somebody who's just brilliant at everything they do. Well, Chuck Connors is one of them guys. Because as a professional athlete, he was absolutely brilliant, being both a professional baseball player and a professional basketball player. He wasn't just some minor league player in both of these, he was like a serious major league player, before deciding one day that he fancied treading the boards and becoming an actor, going on to star in The Rifleman for 5 years. And I'll admit, I didn't know any of this until I started researching this video, because his performance in this film is that strong. He does not strike you as the kind of man that was once an athlete, because he holds his own against these really good actors that are all around him. We get a very strong performance from Nanette Newman. We get a very strong showing from my favourite James Bond girl, Luciana Paluzzi, once again showing that she's more than just set dressing. Alan Cuthbertson as well, he is outstanding in this film, because his character's meant to have claustrophobia, and he plays it so well that every scene he's in, you're sitting there sweating with him. So this film was made on a budget of about $1.5 million, and in 2025 money, that's about $20 million. So it was made on the cheap. I was quite surprised at this because it doesn't look like a cheap film. So this film was made in the 1960s, and this was a scant 20 years since the end of the Second World War. The Soviet Union was going from strength to strength, and the EU was in its nascent stage. The idea was at play that all of the excesses of the first half of the 20th century, all the violence, the war, the poverty and the hunger, well, this could all be engineered out of society, and it could be achieved by handing power to scientists and engineers, and without the inherent corruption of politicians. So the titular underwater city in this film, Templemere, and there's a lot in that name as well, Templemere. I won't dive into it for the sake of brevity, but check it out. Well, this is a city of Nemo's own devising. It is a technocratic utopia, a society built on order, efficiency and very strict rules. And these rules are very subtle in the film. Everything seems to be full of joy and happiness, and everybody's enjoying this utopia. But nonetheless, the rules are there and they are to be obeyed. Breaking these rules will meet with strict punishment seemingly. And if this society is so utopian, I ask, Why are there so many security guards everywhere? Because they're not just guarding sensitive areas. Modern documentary filmmakers would describe what's going on here as a system. But, like all systems, it's very inflexible. For instance, all of the heroes in this film, they don't want to be part of this utopia because they are not under Nemo's spell, at least not initially, so they can see it for what it is. This place is quite literally a gilded cage, but Captain Nemo and the system he has created is so inflexible that he can't cope with them. They are not allowed to leave, and at the same time they're not really adjusting well to society down there. Two of them are trying to rob everything in sight. Senator Fraser is constantly trying to negotiate with Nemo because he needs to leave, and eventually when those negotiations fail to get anywhere, he plans an escape that brings absolute chaos and violence to this system. And Lomax, he's got acute claustrophobia. That man can't even sit down, let alone be assimilated by this system. So straight away we are presented with something that looks really great. This society where children run around playing all day, learning to swim. It is a society without any of the vices of life on the surface. There is no prejudice down there. There is no want down there. Everybody is healthy, everybody is well fed, everybody is clothed. Our main characters have nearly died and they have gone to heaven. Little do they realise though, that this system, well, it's lost all humanity. And the people of Templemere, well, they live in a completely hyper-normalised reality. So I argue that it's a system that has lost all humanity. Well, take a look at what happens to Lomax. He is suffering from claustrophobia. It's not his fault. He was involved in a mining accident several years beforehand that left him trapped for days underground. All he wants to do is leave the city, and he's not allowed to. Now, you would assume that in Utopia at least, or they've got top doctors at hand that could treat Lomax and make him feel better, or they'd have advanced drugs available to him that would help his mind settle. And given the nature of this city, you'd think claustrophobia would be something that they deal with on a daily basis. Apparently not, because Lomax's condition continues to deteriorate until he finally snaps and he brings chaos and destruction to the city of Templemere. And tragically, he gets himself unalived. I get the sense from watching this scene that Nemo isn't doing his best to save Lomax, and his reasoning is very simple, it's very logical, and it's very brutal. Nemo has built this system and Lomax is railing against it, and this system can't cope with people like Lomax. So the simplest remedy that Nemo can think up with on the spot is to let nature take its course and let Lomax unalive himself. And he could have stopped this. With all the resources he has available to him, he could have stopped this, but he doesn't, because Lomax is a threat to his system. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this Captain Nemo is wildly different to the original Jules Verne Captain Nemo. And to begin with, it is actually quite a subtle difference. Captain Nemo despises the fact that he has to unalive anybody. He rationalises his actions with the fact that by sinking these ships, he's actually saving tens of thousands of lives. He also deeply mourns the loss of his wife and children, as well as any crew members that he may lose. The version of Nemo we get here talks big, but he's lost all that humanity. So just like in the real world, when outside forces enter one of these systems and bring a little bit of chaos to it, the system goes into survival mode, and that mode basically entails survival of the system at all costs. That is exactly what Nemo is doing here. He's become so enamoured with his own system that he's trying to preserve it at all costs. So Nemo in this film, well, he's become a tyrant, he's a dictator. And that for me is quite paradoxical, because originally Nemo to me, well, he was an anarchist on a mission to bring down the British Empire. Now he's an authoritarian dictator. that sits atop of this technocratic system that provides him with absolute control over everybody. And when I say absolute control, that's exactly what I mean. Because there are scenes in this film where it's insinuated that he is in charge of who gets to go out with who. So it's very subtle, but Christ knows what kind of eugenics he's up to down there. And this provides us with yet another example of how these rigid systems can't cope when outside forces start interfering. Because as soon as these new characters arrive in the city and start mingling, that part of the system starts shaking a little bit. And Captain Nemo starts losing a little bit of control here, because even his right-hand man betrays him over it. And that's a huge deal, because as I said, he's a dictator. The citizens of Templemere worship him. The thing is though, by sacrificing all of Nemo's virtues, we get to explore the reasons why dictators like Nemo get such a large following. So, fear breeds faith. The citizens of Templemere are keenly aware that outside of the walls of their perfect society, there are dark forces. They are kept happy and safe and alive inside the boundaries of Templemere with bread and circuses, and on the outside there lies danger. And very early on in the film we see that every now and again some sharks might breach the perimeter, but you are not to fear, because Captain Nemo is there, benevolent, sitting there atop of your society, and his crew will guard you and keep you safe. The dark forces are kept at bay by Captain Nemo, and in return you give him your absolute loyalty. Captain Nemo provides you with food, shelter, luxury beyond your wildest dreams, and in return you give him your utter devotion. More so, you give his system your utter devotion. Any notions of free will that you may have, or individualism, you bury them deep, because you are being kept alive and you are being kept in the lap of luxury by this man and the system that he and he alone has devised, in exactly the same way that the Austrian painter protected the German people from the chaos of the 1920s. In their minds, Nemo is doing the same thing for them. Another example of these dark forces that Nemo keeps at bay is Mobula. So you can't build a dictatorship that's disguised as a utopia without a very real cost. We know this from the purges in Soviet Russia during the 1920s and 30s, and the absolute depravity of the runners-up of World War II. And that is what Mobula is doing in this film. That's what she represents, because we learn from dialogue from Nemo himself that when he was building Templemere, this creature was injured and it's a little bit insane, and it will, given the opportunity, violently destroy the city. So on the one hand, Nemo uses this. He uses this to cement power, because there's this big monster out there that he protects everybody from, and he alone can do it. And on the other hand, she is the one paying the price of utopia. Let's just take a minute to appreciate Mobula, because she is one of the coolest sci-fi monsters of all time. And she is one of the coolest sci-fi monsters of all time because she's a giant manta ray. And manta rays are like the coolest thing in the ocean. For me, Mobula is one of the highlights of this film, even though she is the very living embodiment of the fact that the price of utopia, well, that's paid in suffering. So yes, this is a very elegant study of the notion that you can engineer all of the ills out of society, but it's got another trick to pull on you, because there's this scene, and on the top of things it's quite a throwaway scene. It's Nemo explaining that he's got grand plans. He's going to build another Templemere, and then a further one after that that's going to be even bigger than the first two, while simultaneously, subtly but surely, the system is starting to buckle. behind the scenes, people are drawing their plans against him. They're all making escape plans, and even his right-hand man is betraying him. So certainly at this point of the film, the system is starting to strain a little bit. And in the real world, when this happens, what the system does is this: it just offers more of itself, because that is the only thing it knows how to do. So the concept of these 2 additional temple mirrors is that it's just the system offering more of itself when it is in crisis. It's a properly subtle bit of filmmaking. Captain Nemo and the Underwater City isn't just some disposable sci-fi film. It's a cautionary tale about social engineering and these rigid utopian visions, because at its heart it's telling us that every utopia comes at a cost, and that when these systems begin to fail, those in charge, well, they just respond with more control, not less. I also think that we need to understand the word utopia, because it's a mashup of the Latin word for no and the Greek word for place. No place. I.e., is it really attainable? Or did Sir Thomas More, the man that invented the word, have a better understanding of human nature than we do in the 21st century? Well, anyway, what do you think? Was Nemo City doomed to fail? Let me know in the comment section. Thank you for watching. As always, please remember this is just my personal view, and if you liked it, consider hitting the old like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching.
Sounds like the end of the world. Flames dancing wild unfurled.